Have you ever paused, truly paused, to consider the final digit of the year you were born? Not the full year, not the decade it evokes, nor the cultural moment it represents. Not even the month or the day. Just that single final digit, that last number, that quiet, unassuming symbol. A detail so small you've probably written it 1,000 times. On forms, in your memories, etched into countless passwords and documents, without ever stopping to question it. It seems trivial, doesn't it? A speck in the machinery of a date. But what if that single digit is more than a punctuation mark on a calendar? What if it holds a hidden resonance, a vibration, a symbolic signature embedded into the very architecture of your soul? Carl Jung, the father of analytical psychology, might say that it does. For Jung, nothing was random. Not even the moment of your birth. The universe, he believed, does not speak in straight lines. It speaks in symbols, in myths, dreams, archetypes. It speaks through synchronicities and hidden patterns, through the language of the unconscious, through what he called the collective psyche. And that collective psyche is not some distant fog. It is present in you, alive in you. Your mind is not isolated. It's an expression of something larger, something timeless. In Jung's symbolic world, time itself is not just a measurement. It is a force with psychological texture, a force that leaves archetypal fingerprints on the soul at the moment of birth. So, what if that final digit in your birth year is one of those fingerprints? What if it is a symbolic tone, a kind of spiritual frequency that has been humming underneath your life's melody since the day you arrived? Perhaps it is not a command, not a label, not a rule, but a resonance, a subtle psychic rhythm that has guided your emotional tendencies, your patterns of growth, your relationships with beginnings, endings, and everything in between. Let's take a breath and consider this not through the lens of superstition, but through the symbolic, through the archetypal. Jung was not interested in fortune-telling. He was not a mystic who peddled deterministic answers. He did not offer people a set of rules to explain who they were. His work pointed us inward. He sought to awaken the parts of ourselves we've ignored, to bring the unconscious to consciousness, and to help us see the patterns shaping our lives. And if you learn to read numbers as symbols, you may find that they too become mirrors. Not mirrors that reflect your appearance, but mirrors that reflect your soul's patterns. Imagine this. 0 is not just a placeholder. It is a circle, the void, the infinite, the spiritual womb where all creation begins. 1 is not just the start. It is the pioneer, the individual who dares to step away and become. 2 is not just a number. It is the reflection, the mirror, the sacred other. It carries the tension and tenderness of duality. 3 is the synthesis, the child of opposites, the joyful messenger, the one who dances between realms. Each number contains a mythic essence, and when seen through this symbolic lens, the final digit of your birth year becomes more than a statistic. It becomes a whisper from your deeper self. So often we look outward for meaning. We ask others who we are. We chase labels and diagnoses, roles and reputations. But meaning often lives in the smallest details. And sometimes it is the overlooked symbol that opens the door to what we've always known deep down. Think of that final digit as the closing note of your soul's entrance song. It doesn't define the whole song, but it colors it. It sets the emotional tone. It lingers in the air long after it is heard, like a subtle fragrance that only the inner self can truly detect. It is the end of the timestamp that marked your arrival. But symbolically, it could be the beginning of your deeper understanding. To be clear, you are not a number. Jung would never reduce a human soul to a digit. The symbolic life is not about narrowing yourself into definitions. It's about expanding your awareness of the energies moving within and around you. In that sense, this exploration is not prescriptive. It is invitational. It does not tell you what to believe. It asks you to pause, to feel, to listen. Because symbols don't shout, they whisper. And in the symbolic world, a number is not just a number. It is a tone, an energy, a myth, a key to understanding the unconscious rhythm. You've been dancing to your whole life. Let's try a simple image. Imagine you were born in 1984. The final digit, 4 speaks of groundedness, structure, and the sacred geometry of foundations. There's an instinct to create order, to stabilize, to build something that will last. Now consider someone born in 1989. The 9 vibrates with the resonance of completion, of cycles ending and being reborn. That person may be drawn to transformation, to helping others release, to walking others through emotional thresholds. Same decade, same century, but different closing tone, different symbolic note, different psychic invitation. These patterns live beneath the surface of personality. They show up not just in what we do, but how we do it, how we relate to change, to intimacy, to struggle, to silence. What this journey offers you is not a set of answers, but a set of lenses, a new way of looking at something. So small you may never have given it a second thought. But in the symbolic world, the small often reveals the most. And so, before we dive into each of the digits, from 0 to 9, let's name the sacred task we are undertaking here. We are not assigning traits. We are not categorizing people. We are inviting the unconscious to speak through symbol. We are stepping out of the literal and into the mythic. And we are asking a question most people never think to ask. What has this digit been trying to show me all along? In the chapters to come, we'll walk through each final digit, not as a means of confinement, but as a means of reflection. Each number will be offered not as truth, but as invitation. A pattern, a possibility, a mirror, not to define you, but to help you remember. So take a moment now. Reflect on that final digit. Picture it. Breathe into it. Feel what arises, not intellectually, but emotionally, symbolically, even dreamily. And ask, what if this number has been speaking to my soul all along? We begin where all things begin and end. 0. A number that isn't really a number at all, at least not in the conventional sense. It is a paradox, a mystery, a shape rather than a quantity. A circle, whole and endless, with no defined start and no finite conclusion. And yet, this digit appears at the very root of modern mathematics, of cosmic symbols, and, perhaps most intimately, at the close of some of our birth years. If your birth year ends in 0, you carry within you the resonance of this sacred mystery. It is subtle, quiet, often unacknowledged by the outside world. But in the symbolic language of the soul, 0 is profound. Across many ancient traditions, 0 is not seen as emptiness, but as potential. It is the primordial womb, the cosmic void, the place of pre-creation. It is not what is, it is what might become, the field of infinite possibility. Jung might call this the archetype of the self, not the ego, not the conscious personality, but the deeper totality of who you are, the self that contains both your light and your shadow. The self that lives beyond your identity, your resume, your history. The self that is whole, even when the world around you is not. To be born under the vibration of 0 is to carry a soul tone that is less about doing and more about being. You may have felt this as a kind of otherness, a subtle disconnection from the rush of conventional life. Perhaps you've never fit easily into boxes, roles, trends, or even identities. It's not that you resist them. It's that your soul seems to move around them, like water around a stone. You might be the person others come to when they lost, not because you have all the answers, but because your presence itself feels like a sanctuary. You carry the quiet reminder that life is not always about forward motion. That meaning is often found in stillness, in silence, in the in-between. The mandala, one of Jung's favorite symbols for the self, is composed of circles and symmetrical patterns. In meditative traditions, it represents inner wholeness, the integration of all the scattered parts of our being. 0 echoes this mandala energy. It doesn't divide. It contains. People born under this digit often radiate a spiritual gravity. Not a heavy seriousness, but a depth that invites others inward. You may be reflective, intuitive, attuned to dreams, symbols, and the ineffable. Your essence speaks not in declarations, but in subtleties, in the way you notice. Listen, observe. But this gift also carries a challenge, because 0 is the number of the void Those under its influence may wrestle with a deep existential longing, a sense of not quite belonging, of floating, of watching others build castles, while you dwell in a wide-open space that no one else seems to see. You may go through seasons where nothing feels solid, where identities feel borrowed, where ambition feels foreign. The world, which values performance and clarity, may not know what to make of your depth, your stillness, your intuitive way of navigating reality. The shadow of zero is emptiness mistaken for meaninglessness. But zero is not meaningless. It is pure meaning before it has taken form. Jung taught that when we feel lost, we are often being drawn closer to the center of the self. Not the self that performs, but the self that is. And those born under zero are often called to hold sacred space for themselves, for others, for what cannot yet be named. You are not here to rush. You are not here to chase. You are not here to measure your life in accomplishments alone. You are here to listen, to hold, to remember the original rhythm that the rest of the world has forgotten. This does not mean your life lacks motion. In fact, those with this soul imprint often undergo deep internal transformation. But it happens quietly, like the shifting of tectonic plates beneath the surface of the earth. You may be drawn to spiritual practices not because you are seeking escape, but because your soul naturally vibrates with the timeless. Meditation, art, contemplation, nature, these are not hobbies for you. They are languages, ways of coming home. And yet the world may ask you to speed up, to define, to explain. But your task is to trust the rhythm of the sacred pause, the space between inhalation and exhalation, the invisible silence that holds all sound. That is where you live, and that is where your wisdom waits. Carl Jung believed that we are all on a path of individuation, the journey of becoming our whole selves. And those who carry the zero are often tasked with holding the container for this process, not just for themselves, but for others. You are the one who senses the spiritual weather before it changes, the one who sees through masks, the one who knows when a chapter has truly ended, even before anyone says goodbye. You are not defined by noise, you are defined by presence. Your soul tone is like a bell rung in a silent temple. It echoes through others, even if they never know why they feel calm in your presence. Your healing does not come from doing more. It comes from trusting that your being itself is sacred. You don't need to be louder. You don't need to be faster. You don't need to be anything other than who you already are. And when you stop resisting your own stillness, something shifts. Your life begins to feel like a mandala unfolding, not in straight lines, but in spirals. And you remember, you are not the void. You are the womb of creation. You are not nothing. You are the sacred ground from which everything begins. From the stillness of zero, the mystery of the void, the circle unbroken, something stirs, something moves, something dares to rise. That something is one. To be born in a year ending in one is to carry within your soul the energy of beginning, not in theory, but in bold living motion. One is not the womb. One is the birth, the spark, the flame, the foot that steps into the unknown with no map, only instinct. In symbolic and mystical traditions, one is the archetype of the pioneer. It carries the force of differentiation. The moment something separates from the whole and declares, I am. This is not ego in the shallow sense. It is identity in its rawest, most sacred form. The call to become, to stand, to move forward, not because it's safe, but because the soul must. Carl Jung spoke at length about individuation, the psychological and spiritual process of becoming your truest, most whole self. It is not a comfortable journey. It often requires separation, confrontation, and rebirth. For those born under the vibration of one, this journey often begins early, sometimes long before you're ready, sometimes without permission. There may have been moments, even as a child, when you felt a subtle tension between what was expected and what was true, between the roles you were given and the person you felt emerging from within. You might have questioned rules others accepted. You might have noticed a quiet fire inside, a need to do things your way, even if that way made no sense to others. This isn't rebellion for the sake of rebellion. It is the soul's need for authenticity. And that is the heartbeat of the number one, authentic emergence. You may not have always had the words for it, but the feeling is unmistakable. A sacred impatience with stagnation, with imitation, with falsehood. You are not here to copy, you are here to create. People born with this digit often carry the archetype of the initiator, the leader, the flame-bringer. This doesn't always mean loud or commanding. In fact, many ones are introverts, but the energy of initiation lives in you. You begin things, you question things. You walk first, not because you're sure, but because something inside you whispers, try. This is your gift, but like all archetypal energies, it comes with a shadow. The light of one is the courage to be original. The shadow is the fear of standing alone. You may find yourself carrying burdens that no one else seems to see. The pressure to lead, the pressure to perform, the exhausting belief that if you don't do it, no one will. And often, behind this drive, there lives a quieter fear. If I don't succeed, will I be forgotten? If I don't keep moving, will I be left behind? Sometimes this fear drives you into overachievement. Other times, into isolation. You may swing between longing for freedom and longing for belonging, between forging your own way and wishing someone would just understand. Jung might say that these internal tensions are necessary initiations. They are the growing pains of becoming. Because true individuation, the kind that brings not just success, but soul-deep fulfillment, does not come from being first, but from being true. And that is where your healing lies. Your path is not about proving your worth by doing what no one else has done. Your path is about embodying your own truth so deeply that you give others permission to do the same. You don't have to carry the world. You only have to carry your own fire. When the energy of one is conscious and integrated, it becomes luminous, purposeful, generative. You begin to walk not with urgency, but with clarity. You learn that leadership is not control. It's not about having answers. It's about having alignment. You become the kind of person who inspires, not by effort, but by example. And you begin to recognize that your originality is not a curse. It's not loneliness. It's medicine. In a world drowning in repetition, in mimicry, in the safe scripts of conformity, your soul carries the reminder that something new is always possible. You are the edge where the old ends and the new begins. You are the whisper of evolution. You are the soul who says, I will go first. And even if your path is unclear, even if your steps are shaky, even if your voice trembles when you speak your truth, you still go. That is your sacred task. That is your gift. But remember, beginnings are not just external. They are internal too. You are not here just to start businesses, create art, or build systems. You are here to begin within, to ask questions others won't, to dismantle what doesn't serve, to return to your center again and again, even when the world tries to pull you away from it. Let every chapter in your life remind you, you are not here to be understood by everyone. You are here to be true to yourself. You are not broken because you don't fit the mold. You were never meant to fit. You were meant to shape. Jung would likely tell you this. The one who dares to begin often walks alone, but not forever. In time, others find the courage to follow, not because they were told, but because someone lit the way. So if your final digit is 1, hear this. You do not need to be fearless. You only need to be faithful to your truth, to your instinct, to your becoming. You are not just the first step. You are the invitation to all who have forgotten how to begin. If 1 is the flame that dares to rise, then 2 is the mirror that catches its reflection. To be born in a year ending in 2 is to carry the energy of relationship, of sacred duality. This is the archetypal soul that doesn't just move through the world. It feels it. It senses. It attunes. It resonates. It's not merely concerned with what is, but with what is felt, what is shared, and what is true between us. In symbolic language, the number 2 represents polarity, light and dark, self and other, inner and outer. Where 1 breaks away to form an identity, 2 seeks the reflection of that identity and connection. This is not the loud call to begin. It is the quiet yearning to belong. If your birth year ends in 2, you may recognize this longing in yourself, a pull toward intimacy, not just in romance, but in every relationship that matters. You are the soul who looks for meaning in eye contact, in tone, in what is not said. You feel what others feel before they speak it. You read between the lines, not just of words, but of moods, of gestures, of silences. You likely learned this sensitivity early, perhaps in childhood. Your nervous system became a tuning fork for the emotional weather in your environment. You learned to adapt, to soothe, to mediate, sometimes not because you wanted to, but because you had to. Connection was your survival instinct. You preserved peace, even if it cost you your voice. And this is where the soul tone of 2 begins to bloom, in the space between survival and sacred presence. Jung spoke often of the anima and animus, the inner feminine and masculine energies that live within us all. He saw the journey of the psyche as one of integration, bringing together opposites, to create inner wholeness. Those born under the number 2 often feel this dynamic intensely. They live with one foot in their own soul, and one foot in the emotional experience of others. This isn't codependency, it's deep relational intelligence. You feel what others overlook. You ask the questions that unlock. You recognize the shifts in a room without needing anyone to explain them. And yet this is both a gift and a vulnerability. The shadow of 2 is self-abandonment. In reaching for harmony, you may lose your edges. In seeking closeness, you may forget to return to yourself. You may give too much, stay too long, apologize when you're not the one at fault, all in the name of keeping the peace. Even when that peace is untrue, even when it's built on the quiet erosion of your needs. But Jung would say this: the task of the 2 soul is not to dissolve into love, but to bring your full self into it. You are not here to merge until you disappear. You are here to meet, to stand heart open, voice intact, willing to hold space, but unwilling to vanish inside it. You may have been taught that your empathy is a weakness, that your depth makes you fragile. But the opposite is true. To feel this much and still choose to love, that is strength. When integrated, the energy of 2 becomes luminous. You become the bridge between hearts, between perspectives, between realities. You don't collapse into one side or the other. You hold the tension between them. You are a peacemaker, yes, but not because you avoid conflict. Because you know how to speak truth with grace. You are a mirror, not just reflecting, but revealing. And people feel safe with you, not because you fix them, but because you see them. You hold them in your gaze, not with judgment, but with the kind of compassion that disarms. You are the presence that says, I see you, I feel you, I'm still here. But this role, if you're not careful, can become a trap. You are not here to hold everyone's pain. You are not here to be a container for other people's chaos. You are not required to absorb what they won't feel for themselves. You must learn to ask, what is mine to carry, and what is mine to release? Because your gift is too sacred to be drained by everyone who needs a listener. You are not a sponge. You are a sanctuary. And sanctuaries have doors. You are allowed to say no. You are allowed to feel your own feelings before tending to someone else's. You are allowed to speak, even when it disrupts the illusion of peace. In fact, that is when your voice is most needed. Jung taught that wholeness is not perfection. It is integration. And for the 2 soul, integration means learning to balance connection with boundaries. It means learning to love without losing, to care without collapsing. When this energy is honored, you become a true soul companion. You help others feel seen. You bring depth to conversations, nuance to decisions, empathy to systems that have grown cold. You are the one who hears the song behind the words, the grief behind the anger, the truth behind the silence. And you are also the one who must turn inward. Not just once, but over and over. Because your greatest relationship is not the one you have with others. It's the one you have with yourself. That is where your empathy begins. That is where your soul remembers. So if your final digit is 2, hear this. You are not fragile because you feel. You are strong because you stay open. But let your openness begin with you. Feel you. Hold you. Speak for you. Because when you do, your presence doesn't just heal. It liberates. After connection comes creation. If 2 reflects and relates, 3 manifests. It takes the unseen, the feeling, the idea, the tension between opposites, and births it into the world. To be born in a year ending in 3 is to carry within your soul the tone of expression, a sacred spark that asks not just what is true, but how do I show it? How do I give it voice, shape, motion, rhythm? 3 is the number of the sacred third, the child born of the union between 1 and 2, between self and other, impulse and reflection. In nearly every spiritual and symbolic tradition, 3 is a number of power, of magic, of manifestation, the Holy Trinity, the triangle, the past, present, and future, the beginning, middle, and end. It doesn't just balance opposites, it gives them meaning. In Jungian terms, the number 3 holds a rich archetypal resonance. It is often associated with the divine child, the trickster, and the messenger, beings who stir transformation not by force, but by energy, play, and spontaneity. They remind us that life is not only sacred, it is also alive, mysterious, expressive, and full of rhythm. If your final digit is 3, this rhythm likely lives in you. You may not always speak loudly, but your energy expresses itself naturally, through words, movement, imagery, or laughter. Through your presence, people often feel something move, something shift. You stir emotions, not to provoke, but because your being carries a kind of creative electricity. People born under this number often feel life intensely. The colors are brighter, the emotions are louder, the world feels layered, symbolic, beautiful, and sometimes overwhelming. You might have always had the sense that life needs to be expressed, not just endured. That if you didn't give voice to what you felt, it might consume you. You may find that your natural state is one of translation, taking the raw material of the soul and crafting it into something others can feel. Story, song, humor, art, connection. These are your soul's languages. They're not hobbies. They're lifelines. And even if you are quiet, even if your creativity is internal, there's still a current in you, a need to give shape to what is invisible. That's the gift of the 3 energy. It makes meaning visible. But like all sacred gifts, it comes with a shadow. Because you feel so deeply, because you process so quickly, there's a danger of becoming scattered, of chasing stimulation or expression without grounding. You may leap from idea to idea, person to person, experience to experience, always moving, always sharing, but never fully landing. The unintegrated 3 can become a performer, not in a literal sense, but energetically. Always on, always entertaining, always offering something to the world, while secretly feeling unseen. Because the spotlight is addictive, but it can also be a shield. Behind the expression, there is often a question. If I stop performing, will anyone stay? If I am not entertaining, will I still be loved? If I stop moving, what will I feel? These questions are not flaws. They are doorways. Jung would say that true wholeness comes not from denying these fears, but from walking through them. From learning that expression is not performance, that creativity is not obligation, that your soul's value does not depend on its ability to shine. You are not here to dazzle. You are here to reveal. And revelation does not always look like art or laughter or movement. Sometimes it looks like stillness, like silence, like listening before you speak. This is the soul lesson of the 3. To know when to speak and when to listen. When to show and when to rest. To root expression not in the desire to be seen, but in the deep truth of what wants to move through you. When this energy is integrated, the 3 becomes a channel of inspiration. You are the soul who reminds others that emotion is not a burden. It's a palette. That joy is not frivolous, it's fuel. That grief is not a punishment. It's poetry waiting to be born. You are the messenger, not because you speak louder than others, but because your voice carries something unspoken. Something others didn't know they needed until they heard it. You bring light into shadowed places. You awaken the heart that had forgotten how to beat with feeling. You bring play where there was only pressure. You show the world that beauty is not a luxury. It is a necessity. And that is your medicine. You may find your gift flowing through many mediums. writing, music, humor, conversation, visual art, dance, storytelling, entrepreneurship, teaching, even how you style your home or dress your body. It doesn't matter whether you identify as a creative in the traditional sense. The soul of 3 is inherently expressive, but you must tend to your own well. You must remember that your energy is precious, and it needs replenishment. You don't always have to be on. You don't have to turn every moment into content. You don't have to explain yourself constantly. You are allowed to simply be, and when you do, your expression becomes even more powerful. Because it's not coming from the need to be loved. It's coming from love itself. So if your final digit is 3, know this. You are not here to impress. You are here to express. You are not a performer. You are a conduit for beauty, for meaning, for the sacred pulse of life. When you speak, when you move, when you create, the world doesn't just watch, it feels. You help others remember what it means to be fully alive. To cry, to laugh, to sing, to shout, to whisper truths that change everything. And you do it not by being perfect, but by being real. After the spark of expression ignited by 3, something in the soul begins to crave ground beneath its feet. Not just inspiration, but foundation. Not just creativity, but continuity. This is where 4 enters. To be born in a year ending in 4 is to carry within your soul a vibration of structure, stability, and sacred order. In a world that often spins in chaos, yours is the energy that knows how to create frameworks, not to control, but to hold, not to restrict, but to root. 4 is the number of form. It is the square, the cross, the 4 seasons, the 4 directions, the 4 elements, earth, air, fire, and water. It represents wholeness within limitation, groundedness within movement. In Jungian psychology, 4 is deeply symbolic of manifested totality, not as abstract potential, but as something real, lived, embodied. Where 3 plays, 4 constructs. Where others drift, you define. Where others dream, you design. If this is your number, you likely have a natural instinct for creating systems, solving practical problems, building something solid out of scattered parts. You are not threatened by responsibility. You become yourself through it. There is a quiet, often unspoken reliability to your presence. People may look to you to keep it together, often without even asking if you want that role. You may have been this way since childhood, organized, responsible beyond your years. The one who noticed what was needed and made sure it happened, not because you wanted control, but because you felt the weight of what would fall apart if you didn't step in. This is the soul pattern of the builder. You likely find comfort in routines, rituals, schedules, or plans, not because you lack creativity, but because structure grounds your creativity. While others may resist limits, you see that true freedom often requires them. A song needs rhythm. A house needs walls. A life needs form. And that is your genius. You bring form to what matters. But like every archetype, 4 also carries a shadow. Structure, when unconscious, becomes rigidity. In your sacred desire to create stability, you may sometimes cling to systems, roles, or expectations long after they've served their purpose. You may find yourself fearing change, resisting spontaneity, or measuring your worth by productivity. And beneath all of this can live an unspoken belief. If I stop holding it all together, everything will fall apart. But Jung would remind us, the self is not made whole by control. It is made whole by conscious relationship to structure. We need form, yes, but form must breathe. Your soul is not here to be a machine. It is here to be a container for meaning, not a cage, a temple. When the 4 archetype is integrated, it becomes deeply beautiful. These individuals become the keepers of order, the guardians of the sacred, the architects of peace, not just in buildings or systems, but in hearts, relationships, and communities. You are the one who brings clarity to chaos, who notices the cracks in the foundation and says, let's fix this. Let's make it strong enough to last. You are a pillar, but you are not meant to bear everything alone. That's one of your core lessons. You are allowed to rest. You are allowed to ask for help. You are allowed to change your mind, to drop the weight, to choose presence over perfection. Because your worth is not measured by what you maintain, it's revealed by what you embody. The world needs people like you, people who can take a dream and translate it into reality, who can stay when things get hard, who understand that consistency is a spiritual practice, not just a virtue. But you are also allowed to question the very systems you build. Sometimes what you constructed in an earlier season becomes too small in the next, and your task is not just to create structure, but to know when to rebuild it. Jung taught that the soul is in constant motion, even when the ego resists. The danger for the four-soul is not chaos. It's getting stuck in old forms. It's forgetting that structure when sacred evolves. So if your final digit is 4, hear this. You are not here to be everyone's foundation. You are here to create foundations that nourish everyone, including yourself. You are not here to hold up the world alone. You are here to build spaces where others learn how to hold themselves. You are not here to deny your softness for the sake of strength. You are here to show the world that true strength includes softness. You carry the archetype of the stabilizer, the steward, the sacred builder. And whether you use that gift in your home, your art, your relationships, your career, or your inner life, you are shaping something that will last beyond you. And that is no small thing. Your life may never look loud, but it will leave roots. And perhaps more than anyone else, you understand that the most important things we create are not the tallest towers. They're the quiet structures that let others feel safe, supported, and free to grow. You are the ground beneath their feet, but you must remember, you too need ground. So rest, breathe, let your structure flex. Let it serve your soul, not stifle it. Because when you live from that place, when your inner and outer structures align, you become a rare and sacred force in this world. Not just someone who builds what lasts, but someone who lasts even in the building.